Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host, and I'd like to ask you, do you really know what you're standing on, this planet? You know what's under your feet? And let's say deep under your feet. Maybe it can possibly be beyond your imagination, because everyone's taught that it's just kind of rock and fire and whatever, but it's something else. And I've always been fascinated in this. I've been a fan of Middle Earth for decades. And now there's actually someone who has been there. And it's very rare that people who have been there are back and can talk about it. And so that's why I'm really thrilled to have Lowell Johnson on the show to talk about his experience, unexpected experience, to be taken into this Middle Earth reality that is a super reality, but it's so real and it's something that we need to talk about. So Lowell, welcome to Energy Stew. I'm so glad to talk with you.
Thank you, Peter. It took us a little while to get here, but I'm delighted to be here. And, the things that you and I have shared so far, they were great stories to tell each other, but that information is meant for everyone else to understand too.
And that's the point, is that you were introduced to a whole civilization that exists in a higher frequency that you needed to be ready for, which is why you were allowed to attend. And you were, it was something that they understood you were capable of experiencing with them. And so let's talk about your introduction, which was when you were climbing a mountain, just an innocent guy doing a mountain climb.
Well, I had been triggered by an interest in more metaphysical things. There was a hole that I'd recognized that hadn't been really nourished in some time. And so for a few years, I had been, focusing on meditation and just allowing, whatever is inside of me that's supposed to make itself known, I was just willing to let that experience itself. And so when I went to Shasta, I went there none of this was planned. I was just, I had intended to go to another place in the country, and all of a sudden, when that was unavailable, Mount Shasta just popped into my head. And so everything lined up to make that a reality. But I went there understanding that there had been interactions with ascended masters there. And I don't like to really follow the trails everyone else trails. I like to find energetic sources off trail. And so when I got to those spaces and kind of went like this, okay, it's just me. If they're an ascended master, Saint Germain, I'm available. So in the end, it wasn't going to be an ascended master of that type that I was going to encounter. Somehow the ability for me to understand things in a different dimension, which even back then, I really didn't put together and didn't really comprehend. I was going to be allowed to make a multidimensional experience. And it wouldn't be until months after that I even put that together. When you have the ability to just go somewhere you've never been before, and I'm sure for many, it would have been a rather frightening. I had found an energetic spot and was leaning up against it to make a long story short. I had just finished some water and some grapes, and I was listening to music on my ear pods, had my phone in my back pocket, and I was actually leaned up against the mountain. The only thing between me was this dried brush. When I finished whatever nourishment I was taking, and I leaned back, the music stopped. So when I sat up to take my phone out of my pocket to examine it, my phone was off. Well, it made no sense because it was fully powered 40 minutes ago when I left the car, and it had a multi-battery. Made no sense. When I had sat up to take this in, I felt the breeze from behind me, and then all hell broke loose after that. when I turned around, there was a hole where I had been sitting before Peter, and then the journey to explore that began. We can certainly talk about that in detail, but I want to be mindful of the amount of time that we have to spend today. So you give me some guidance on what you want to.
Well, what happened
me
next?
to. When I turned around to look and realized that there was this hole behind me, I stood up to take it in, and as my eyes were adjusting, because it's just afternoon, the sun's almost overhead. I had looked down the space. There was almost a rise that kind of came up and went down, almost like it was going to go, whatever this was going down. Later, I'll figure out this appears to be a lava tube to me, which makes sense. There's lots of volcanic activity around here. Shasta herself was a volcano, and so was Shastina over here. It made sense. So when my eyes could adjust, it seemed like there was somebody down there, somebody. And when I came to that kind of mindset, I heard someone say, "Do you wish to see Telos?" Well, you kind of hold your energy in check, because you get a little bit of anxiety, but I have no fear of death, and I'm not afraid of things from that perspective, and I'm always curious about things I have not seen before. So maybe those were elements of what it required for me to be the one that was going to come in. I knew nothing about it, so I made my way down this incline, and from where I stood to begin with, I thought it was an adult-sized male, maybe my height. I'm 6 feet tall, which I'm not short, I'm not overly tall, but I thought, that's a respectable size. When I got close enough to really take this person in, he was not 6 feet tall. He was 8 feet and change. Extraordinary, had a white gown on. He had some ribbons on this. I don't know what else to call it. Maybe one day they'll tell me what it was. They were different colors, and so I didn't know if that was some kind of decoration or was indicative of some kind of rank that he held. When I got close enough to him and looked at him, well, first of all, the guy's flawless. There are no wrinkles on him, so it's impossible to say how old this person would have been. And if I had to categorize how they looked Scandinavian to me. Tall, kind of blondish, blue eyes-ish, but their skin was flawless. So when I got closer to him, he said, "Well, you can call me Alex." And I said, "Well, that'll be easy to remember. That's my son's name." He said, "Yeah, we know about your son. Follow me." And so we began a tour of the facility. We kept going down this incline, and he began to tell me more about the current state. He explained that, yes, there was a king and queen, but really it's the Council of 13 that really is the body that is kind of governs it, if you want to see it that way. Now, there's no legislation that takes place in a place like this. The role of the people that sit on that council, there are 6 feminine, 6 masculine for balance, and Adama is the head priest, the 13th body. Their role and the reasons that they were chosen to fill in those capacities is their level of spiritual awareness and maturity. Their job is to assist the rest of the population to achieve those same levels.
So how did you get farther than just this path down to this civilization of Telos? How far down did you have to go? What opened up for you to see that there's really a civilization?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we reached the bottom of this incline, I looked behind me to see if I could see lake from where I came from, and there wasn't anything behind me. So there's part of me right now that when I keep replaying this wonders whether I stepped through a portal of some type. But anyway, when we got closer to the bottom, it opened up to a pretty large, I want to call it a staging area, because I'm not quite sure how to categorize it. So here is this tube we came out of. As we get to this wide area, there are 5 more tubes straight across from me. And when I look from where we came in, immediately to the left, there was a platform. It's about 6 feet by 6 feet, and it appears to have 2 bucket seats on it. There's no console. That's all this thing is. And so off to my left, there's another one. And off to the right, there's another one. And as I'm taking this in, well, Alex makes his way to the left-hand side of this, we'll call it a hovercraft, because that's what it's going to turn into, and motions for me to get in the other one. As soon as my butt hit
You
that,
called it a hovercraft?
yeah. As soon as my butt was on it, this thing, it hovered. And we were headed through that middle tube on the other side. So the sensation of moving, that we understand it, hold on 1 second. I'll be right with you, Peter. That sensation wasn't there. I knew I was moving, but the idea of air passing through me, yeah, there wasn't any of that sensation. And yet here we went. As we got closer to the other side of wherever this tunnel was taking us, you can see light starting to come in from the other end. And when it did, before we got out of this tube, the light was starting to refract off the crystals that were in the walls. And every inch you took, the light refraction just changed. And it was like one incredible kaleidoscope. Well, all I wanted to do was stay in this environment. And as soon as we reached the opening, here we're in the city of Telos. And he takes this craft up so we can see it like a cityscape view that you've seen in photographs. This was the outline of the city of Telos on its first level, and there are 5. So some of the things that it's circular in orientation. In the middle of it, there's a huge white pyramid that has a capstone on the top that I've been told was given to them by Venus. There are numerous
given to them,
buildings.
excuse me, given to them by
Venus.
Venus, the planet Venus.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's
That
a whole
day,
other story about life on other planets.
right. Yes. There's been intercommunication with, I've come to understand that the extraterrestrials we refer to, the ones that are benevolent and are here for us, they like to be considered ultra-terrestrials, because they are. They're higher versions of ourselves. And the extraterrestrials are all the other than we just don't understand about yet. Anyway, there was daylight in this place. Now I look up, understanding in my mind that I'm underground somewhere. And so I'm trying to see where this thing, how high it goes up, and I can't see the top. There's no light coming streaming through here. So it's not from the sun, and yet it's illuminated like daylight. When I started to ponder on that more, I started to remember what I was seeing, and I didn't remember seeing any shadows whatsoever. So I have to believe that the lighting there was crystal driven, like most of the other things are. The buildings are all crystal. There's multiple temples on this level. Most of the population lives on this level. It was something to see.
When you say level, are there different stations down below it that you travel down through elevators or escalators to?
I don't know how we got to, it was explained to me that there are 5 levels of Telos. And if we could imagine how vast this really covers, they say it's 25 square miles. So who knows what's underneath here? And again, keep in mind, it's in another dimension altogether, not one that we can't experience physically, because we know that we do that through the 5th dimensional awareness here. It's just a vibrational match. And apparently my vibration matched theirs enough so that I could experience what they experienced. This is kind of the drum I've been beating since I understood what this was all about. And when we talk about maintaining high vibrations, here is the reason why. Because we can experience everything that vibrates around us at the same levels. And when we do, and we're open to things like you've experienced and I've experienced, they'll reveal more to you. And once they know that you're okay with that, they're going to reveal a little more. It's fascinating to me that when we talk about disclosure now, there's still a lot of attention on all those lights in the sky and the arguments about whether they are or aren't. Well, let me tell you something. I've stopped worrying about those things in the sky because there's been a civilization that's been here for a lot longer than we have that has just been waiting in the wings for our vibration to match theirs again.
Right. So within is just as fascinating as above.
Yes, absolutely. And no one had any idea. In Middle Earth and Inner Earth certainly weren't things that were on my radar at all, Peter. I can tell you what I knew about Telos before I visited Mount Shasta. I'd seen it on a cover of a book that first weekend when I got here. I had connections to Lemuria that kind of resonated with me, but there had been no opportunity for me to put any of that in perspective. Well, I'm clearly on an accelerated learning curve here for a purpose. And I think one of the purposes is so that I can hurry up and understand it quickly enough so that I can help others understand what it is that we're going through. It's time to stop worrying about all the things that separate us, because we're about to move into an area where we don't see that separation anymore.
You're experiencing what higher consciousness means. You know, a civilization that is already at higher consciousness, and how they perform and relate is something that we need to learn about so we can adjust ourselves as we grow into a higher consciousness.
That's really well said. And if there's anything to come out of this particular broadcast today, that in my mind would be the most important one.
That's why I'm so happy to be interviewing you, because it's so important for us to know about the reality beyond the third dimension that most people have no idea about, and certainly very few people are even going to want to listen to this show because it's too hard to listen to when you can't grasp it.
That's absolutely true. There has to be a shift in your own awareness and willingness to see and hear things you don't understand. But if we can't get past all the things that we think that we've learned out of books or mentors or teachers or experts, whatever it is, we can't break free of that. Somebody said this to me once, and I love this phrase. So I'm going to use it here. Why do we fight for our limitations? When the universe tells us that there's no limit to what we can see and experience, we're just stuck in this particular experiment.
But I think that's true to wise souls to know the difference. And, you know, I do shows with a woman who's an animal communicator, Sandra Mendelson, and she has dozens of different species that speak to her. And is it that all animals can speak with her? No. Among every species, there are the wise ones who are multidimensional and can actually communicate with her about very profound topics that can't imagine animals would even grasp. And yet they're brilliant, but it's not all species, all members of all species, just like all humans can't grasp so much of what we're talking about.
We all have different journeys and different levels of advancement. Part of our responsibility is to help the universe evolve. That's why we keep incarnating, so we learn these bad lessons and these good lessons. And so you learn those unique ones on your unique journey. I learn mine uniquely on my journey. In the end, all of that contributes to the collective Akash. And sooner or later, I get to call upon your experiences, Peter, without ever having to experience them myself. So thank you for all the crappy things you had to learn, and you're welcome for the ones I had to learn on your behalf. But that's kind of our role here.
Yeah. Yeah, we're here to talk with each other about our fascinations, because our fascinations are through, let's call it our imagination, which is only the way we create any kind of reality, because life is an illusion to begin with. So we are all living in a sense, an empty space that's built up into something just via consciousness, and people don't know that. And once you know that, then you can be the inventor of greatness. And that's why these people in Telos and many other civilizations under our earth are able to build these fascinating cities and beautiful environments that work perfectly, because they have the consciousness to know better, to create that level. And they probably had to learn from experience too. And
Of course they did. Sure
yeah,
they did. But at the level that they're in, they're not affected by the delay to manifest things. They can really alter matter in ways that we've heard about and we think is really cool. They can do that now. And the more evolved they get, the better they get at it. The appeal between them and us right now is that they have some wonderfully advanced technologies, but they see things from a fifth dimensional perspective, which isn't a bad thing at all. But they've gone beyond duality. So they only think in those terms. But what does humanity have to offer them? Where does our creativity come? It comes from our emotion. So imagine taking their technology and our emotion, wanting to improve upon that. That's what everyone's excited to see what'll
right,
manifest when we
right.
get to the next level.
But it's not eliminating duality, because duality exists at every level. It's just the density of duality on our plane here.
Yeah, well, no one's ignoring that. And yes, there are still lessons to learn from that. They see beyond it. The collective looks at it solution oriented, not they want to point a finger at the other side on whose problem this was. We're beyond that.
Well, I think there's a consciousness, a higher consciousness of truths of life that us humans on the surface here can't identify, because we're not of that vibration yet to identify truths. It's just like many years ago, I guess before the Renaissance, when all artwork had no perspective to it, because nobody could identify perspective. They could look at it all day long and they didn't know it was perspective, and they couldn't paint it or draw it. And then all of a sudden they became conscious of it, and all of a sudden it went into all their artwork. And how could that be? How could they not have known they were seeing perspective? Because their consciousness hadn't risen to that level. And so
yes,
think of what we haven't risen to.
I've asked to have some of those alleged resources, those powers. I asked to get them back. And some of them have materialized. I can't. One of the last things that Kumu, in future talks, we'll talk about Kumu and this hybrid that I met for what she was supposed to come along to. She had asked me last, she said, "Can you move energy yet?" And I said, "What do you mean yet?" She goes, "Oh, no, you'll be to the point where you can manipulate energy and move it." I said, "I'm looking forward to that day." So I want to be able to defy gravity, and I want to move energy next. But they're capabilities we all have in the next realm too. We're so conditioned by what we think we know, what we're capable of,
Well, more than
and
that,
what we see on our screen. We're just stuck.
We're not capable of seeing beyond what our brains can behold.
True. Our brain's just an interpreter. You have to let your heart core do the interpretation for you. And there is where your inner being is already connected to all of that other greatness. You just have to tap into it and listen.
When the time comes that we're capable of tapping into it, to listen at that level, I think that's what higher consciousness is bringing us. And until then, only unusual people like you are given the access, because, and I know that they've told you that you've had lifetimes where you have been an advanced being. So it's not like you've never been there. It's just that you've chosen this lifetime on this planet now to be densely third dimensional.
Yes. I came back for this purpose. I knew in this lifetime I was here for the handoff between this Earth's reality and the next Earth's reality.
I love that.
And that there was a role that I was supposed to play in that. That's what I came back here for.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'm so glad to know you and to talk about this with you, because you're an ambassador of higher consciousness.
uh, it's hard to hear those words about yourself because I'm just like all the rest of you. Believe me, I had been in the business world and chased all the things that all the rest of us chase, but something snapped in me and showed me things beyond just this. And it took a while. I told you I'm a Capricorn. If somebody had to do due diligence with me, man, you have to dot every I and cross every T in order for me to really believe it for myself. The things that I put on my website they were proof to me, Peter, not for me to tell you what to do. Here, use your discernment on what I found to be true, but this is what I found, and it's true.
See, but that's what supports you so much is your attention to detail, your ability to have discernment and have perspective of this journey that you're on, and being able to talk about it in a grounded way.
I'm pretty sure that I recognize those things in myself. I've always been pretty grounded. It's not that I don't get lifted up every now and then. And what I've been going through lately, I was told about a month ago, make sure you're grounded or you'll be swept away. Well, I can see how that would happen. I start to hear from more and more people, and it's wonderful. That was really the reason for all of this, is when they start to go through these changes themselves. And they're like me, they're looking for a touchstone. I've made myself available for that. I'm
great.
not here to tell you anything. I will tell you what I've experienced and use your own discernment and tell me if it resonates with you.
So we've really run out of time, and I want you to let people know where they can find out more.
The easiest way to find my website these days is just type Lowell Johnson, LOWELLJOHNSON.info, and you'll go right to it.
Oh, good.
If I was to explain the website to you, it's always confusing. So this was a suggestion my guides actually made a month ago. You need to make it easier for people to just type in your name and find it. Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and that's why I guess you've been given an easy name to type in.
Well, so they say. I was never fond of Lowell Johnson. I was named after my father, and anyway.
Good. So this is wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll be talking again because I want to know more. And I'm sure our audience wants to hear more. So Lowell, thanks so much for being a guest on Energy Stew.
Thank you for inviting me, Peter. I'm looking forward to doing this again.
Good. Thank you. And this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.live. I can be reached at peter@heartriver, HEART river.org. Thanks so much for listening, and I'd love to hear from you. Okay, bye.